Hey guys, in the last video we created our app context, which is our centralized state for the application, and now we're able to submit a bill through our EditBill component. It goes to the context and we store it in local storage. And then when we initialize the application, it pulls out all of the bills from local storage. And now what we're going to do in this video is we're going to display that list of bills along with the total for each bill. And if we have enough time by the end of the video, we're going to also create that component that displays the monthly total sum of all of our bills. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so if you haven't already, what I want you to go ahead and do is make sure that your server is running. So go to your directory where your project is, run npm start, you know the deal. So once you have that up and running, let's go ahead and clear our local storage out. The reason why I want to clear it out is because each of our bills here have two items, monthly cost and title, but we actually are going to add another property, which is going to be enabled, because we want to be able to enable and disable certain bills from displaying in our monthly total. So let's go over to our console, and I'm using Google Chrome. It might be slightly different in Mozilla Firefox, but it'll probably be very similar. So open up your console area. So right click, inspect. Go to application, and then you'll see this local storage here. Now you can clear all of your storage. You can go in and you can clear your session storage, and you can clear your cookies and IndexedDB and all of that. But here we just want to, we want to right click here on our local storage. Localhost 3000 depends on your setup, but mine is localhost 3000. And I'm going to click clear. And now when I refresh, you can see that we have an empty array. All right, so since we know that we want to have an enabled field, let's go ahead and open our code editor and go to our EditBill function, our EditBill component, sorry. And what we want to do is whenever we create a new bill, we want to make sure we have that enabled field in there. So let's go to our button, and inside of the button we have this on click. And if you remember, whenever we submit a new bill, what we're doing is we're calling update bills. So here, just put a comma, and we want to say enabled and set that equal to true by default. So whenever we create one, we'll have enabled equal to true by default. And remember, this is just so that whenever we have a list of bills here, we can click on the checkbox and either enable or disable the bill. And if the bill's disabled, it will not count towards the total of our monthly cost, which just allows us to see, how much money we can save. So let's create a bill. Hulu 999. I click add bill, and let's look at the new object here. Here we have enabled equals true, which is what we were hoping for. Cool, so let's move on. So back to our code editor. Inside of the components folder, I'm going to right click new folder, and I'm going to create a new folder called bill list. And inside of here, I'm going to create two files. I'm going to have bill list.js, and I'm also going to have a style.css file. Now what I like to do is just take, one of my other components over here, copy it and paste it into the new one, and then just remove everything inside of the return, and then remove all of this, and then do a search replace, which in VS Code for me, I'm using Windows, is Control Shift and L. And I can change all instances of this and say bill list. And then I'm going to get rid of this. And now I'm going to say hello from bill list, just to make sure this is working properly. And then inside of my app.js, I'm underneath add bill, I'm going to put the bill list. Make sure that you import it here. And I'm going to save and make sure that I see hello from bill list, which I do. Excellent. So let's go ahead and build our bill list. So in that file, I'm going to remove this hello from bill list, and I'm going to create a div. So let's go ahead and create a div, and we want to give this div a class name, which in this case, we're going to call it bill list container. Sorry, I can't see my keyboard with my microphone in the way. So bill list container, And we are going to add some JavaScript inside of here. So between these two tags, I'm going to add curly braces. And here I'm actually going to need to map through our bills. So in order to get bills, I'm actually going to have to grab that from context. So const bills is equal to use context. Now remember, we have to pass in the context that we want to use. So that's going to be bill context. So now we have bills from our context. We have access to that state. So I'm going to say bills.map. And if you are unfamiliar with the map function, I've got a good video on that I'll include in the description. If you're not too familiar with how map works in JavaScript, go ahead and watch that. Pause this video, watch that, and come back. All right, so inside of here, I'm going to grab the bill and the index, which we're going to use as the key. And I'm going to get rid of this semicolon. And inside of here, I'm going to return some JSX. And what I want to return is a div that contains both the checkbox and the bill along with the total. So I guess we'll create a container here because we need to return only one element. And let's give this div a class name. Let's call it bill list row. And we also need to give it a key because that is a demand from React. It has to have a unique key whenever we're mapping through. So let's give that, let's set that equal to index, which is this guy right here. So we'll know that's unique. And inside of here, we want to have, like I said, an input, which is going to be of type checkbox. And then we're going to want to have another div, which has the total and the title of the bill. So let's start with the input. So with our input here, this is going to be of type equal text. Checkbox, my apologies. So type equal checkbox. And let's give it a class name of form check input. Form check input. Okay. And underneath this, let's create our div to house our other information. And inside of here, I'm going to put two curly braces so we can use JavaScript variables. And the first one is going to be bill.title. And then I'm going to go outside of here, put a hyphen, and I'm going to put a $sign because the total is in US dollars, or you can use whatever symbol if you're in a different country for your currency. And inside of here, I'm just going to put bill.monthly cost. Okay. Now I'm going to want to give this a class name, this div. So I'm going to give it a class name of bill list row content. And I think that's going to be everything we need for now. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and let's take a look at what we have here. So it's not styled, but as you can see, we do see the bill along with the price of the bill. And this is in fact a checkbox, which doesn't do anything yet because we don't have it hooked up to our enabled property yet. So before we go any further, let's go ahead and do a little bit of styling before this all gets really messy. So I'm actually going to start with our add bill component. So let's go to our code editor, and then inside of add bill, the folder, open your style.css file, and let's start with .add bill container, and let's set the display equal to block and our margin to auto. Our margin auto will center it, and the width is going to be 350 pixels. Then we want to go ahead and do add bill form control. And we want to have a display of block. We want to have a width, which is equal to 100%. We want to have padding of 5 pixels. And we want to add text align center. And then finally, we want to have a margin bottom of 10 pixels. I'm gonna save that and see what this looks like. Okay, so that gives us a little bit of a better looking form. Let's move over to our bill list really quick. So inside a bill list folder, open your style.css, and we're gonna add 3 styles here. So we're gonna have bill list container. And inside of here, we're going to have margin auto. Whoops. Auto. Then we're going to have box sizing, which we're going to add a border box sizing. And I'm not going over in detail the CSS in this video because I want to focus mostly on the JavaScript, but this is still, usually I just have you guys copy and paste the CSS, but I kind of want to do it manually here so you can start to get a little bit more familiar with CSS in the case that you aren't. So 300 pixels on the width. Bill list row. We're going to do display block. And for our bill list container, bill list row content, we're going to have a display set to inline block. Save that. Let's see what we have. That's looking a lot better. Awesome. So let's go ahead and move on. All right, so what I want to do is actually start hooking up my checkboxes to the bill enabled. So whether or not the bill is enabled should define whether or not the checkbox is checked or not. So under bill list, inside of our return statement, where the input is, I'm going to go underneath the class name, and I'm going to put checked, and I'm going to set that equal to bill. So the current bill that we're looping through, the current one we're on, dot enabled. I'm going to save this, and it should be checked because by default, all of them are checked. And this says you provided a checked prop to a form field without OnChange. Okay, so we need to add an OnChange event, which we will shortly. So just ignore that for now, but we are going to come to that. So I'm going to look at this, and I'm going to come over to my application, and inside of local storage, I want to edit this. I want to set this to false. So I'm going to come in here and manually set this to false really quick. And I save it, and I want to refresh and see what happens. So now that it's false, you can see that it's not checked. So you know that it is in fact tied to our bills .enabled. So we are definitely going to need an OnChange event here. So let's go ahead and go into our input, and underneath checked, let's add an OnChange. And we're going to throw in a function here. And for now, let's just log something. Let's just say bill.enabled. So when I come in here and check this box, you'll see that it says false, and it's going to stay false because when we change it, it's not actually updating the value in our local storage. So the value of checked itself is tied to our JSON here, which let me refresh. Don't ignore this and look at this instead. You can see that enabled is false. So it will always be false here because we're not actually updating the value in local storage with inside of our OnChange event. Okay, hope that makes sense. But you can see that we're logging false here, so you know that it is indeed calling the function whenever we click on it. Cool. So how are we going to tie this to our local storage? Well, what we're going to need to do is inside of our context, we're going to need to create edit, we'll say EditBill function. So let's go ahead and do that. So open up your context, and let's go where we have our update bills function and go underneath that. And we're going to create a function called EditBill. And just like the update bill, we're going to take a bill, but let's just call it bill to update. So it's going to accept a bill to update. And we're going to do a few things. First, we're going to filter through. So let's say const bills filtered. And we have to filter through the array of bills in our state here and find all of the bills except for the one we're trying to update. So let's go ahead and do that. So bills.filter. So this is our filter function of our array object. If you're not too familiar with filter, I've also got a video on that, so I'll include that in the description below. If you're not too familiar with that, please go watch that video and come back. So we're going to filter through, and we're going to say for every bill, we want the ones where bill.title does not equal bill to update dot title. So we want all of the bills that are not equal to the bill that we have here. And then what we want to do is then say const updated bills is equal to, and we're going to do something very similar that we did right here inside of our update bills function. What we'll do is we'll say we want to take all of the bills filtered and then also our bill to update. So all we're doing here is we're taking all of the bills that we have in our state except for the one we want to update. And then we're also adding the one that we want to update. Okay. And so let's do the final two steps, which are extremely similar to this. In fact, exactly the same. We could almost copy and paste it, but we have different, actually, I think we can literally copy and paste this. Yep. We can just copy and paste these two lines from our update bills function. All right. Cool. So with that being said, we now have this edit bill function, but we need to pass it in our value to our children. So let's pass that, save, and then let's go to our bill list component and make sure we destructure that out. Edit bill, save. Actually, before we save, let's go ahead and actually call our edit bill function. So inside of bill list, make sure you go down to your OnChange event inside of your input, and let's call edit bill. So I'm going to remove these two curly braces here and say edit bill. And we want to pass the bill as an object. So we'll create the object here and we'll say title, and we'll set that equal to bill.title. We will have monthly cost, and we'll set that equal to monthly cost. Well, bill.monthly cost. And finally, we will set enabled equal to not bill.enabled. So what this is effectively doing is saying whatever bill.enabled is, we want to set it to the opposite of what it currently is. So I'm going to save this and let's see if this works. First try. All right, let's see. A component is changing a controlled input of type checkbox to be uncontrolled. Input elements should not switch from controlled to uncontrolled. Decide between using controlled or uncontrolled input element for the lifetime of the component. So let's go ahead and fix this really quick. So the reason why I was getting that message was because here I'm saying enable. It should be enabled. All right, so that needs to be enabled, not enable. So I'm going to save this, and I might need to clear my local storage. Probably not. We'll see. So I'm going to refresh inside of here. And let's take a look. We have, yeah, see, enable is now in there. So I'm actually going to come into my local storage again and clear it and create Hulu again. Let me refresh this. Okay, I'm going to create Hulu again. And again, 999, click add bill, make sure it's enabled and not enable. And then let's see what happens when I uncheck it. Cool. As you can see, it updated inside of here to be false now. When I check it again, it's now true again. So every time I uncheck and check this, it's updating this value in local storage to be enabled or disabled. So let's add a few bills really quick. Let's get a few bills in here. Let's add Netflix. I'm going to also add phone. I'm going to add rent. And that should do it for now. So now we have 4 items here in local storage. Let's make sure we refresh it. And you can see they're all enabled. Let's disable a few of these and then refresh. You can see they stay disabled. Now watch what happens here. When I'm clicking these, they're changing order. Why is it doing that? Okay, so the reason why it's doing that, let me show you, is because in context here, the way that we're doing this, the way that we're building these updated bills arrays is whenever we update or create a bill, whenever we edit or update a bill, what we're doing is we're adding that bill last in the array. So when I come over here, when I edit this, watch, I'm going to edit rent. Now it's last. We want to make sure that that order is consistent. And in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure it's always in alphabetical order. So let's come to our context, and I want to create a function in context here called alphabetical order. So let's do that really quick. I'm going to copy this over and explain how this works. So anywhere in here, we'll create a const called alphabetical order and set it equal to a function here that accepts bills. And we want it to return an array of the bills in alphabetical order. So what is this doing? We're saying bills.sort. Sort is a function of the array object, and it's going to take A and B, which is the one we're currently on and the one previous to it, and we want to compare the title. So a.title.toUppercase, because we don't want case to matter. Maybe you accidentally typed rent, but with a lowercase r. So we're going to always treat them as uppercase. And we want to put this less than sign, b.title.toUppercase. And if that's true, return -1, otherwise 0. This is just how the sort function works. I would highly recommend you read up in the Mozilla Firefox docs to see how the Mozilla docs, I don't know why I said Firefox, the Mozilla docs to see how this works. Or I can do a tutorial on it. If you want me to do a tutorial on the sort function, let me know in the comments. But yeah, so this is going to return the array that we provide to it in alphabetical order. So whenever we call updated bills, whenever we create this array, we want to wrap it in our alphabetical order function. So like this. Did I spell that right? I did. I'm being silly right now. I put that in the wrong spot. So updated bills is equal to alphabetical order. Wrap that. There we go. So put alphabetical order around the array itself. So I'm going to do that in both the EditBill function and the updateBills function. So let's go ahead and throw that here as well. I'm going to save it, come back to here, refresh, and I'm going to go to Netflix here and check it. And it's the reason why I did that is because it wasn't initially alphabetized. I don't know. So I'm going to refresh it, and now you can see it stays in the order that we would expect it to. I can't believe I forgot the word alphabetized. But anyway, so now we have basically a working app. I mean, it doesn't display the total, which is the whole point of the app, but you know, whatever. So let's go ahead and just add one more bill so I can demonstrate this all working. So we can say Spotify, I guess. I think that's like $14.99 a month. I'm not sure, but yeah, Spotify. It's checked by default. I can uncheck it. I can uncheck these. You can see that they're updating here. You can see inside of the local storage that enabled is true for Spotify. And let's see, enabled is false for the other ones. And it does not change order because it's always in alphabetical order. So I wanted to do the monthly total in this video, but this actually took a little bit longer than I was expecting. So we're going to save that for the next video. In fact, the next video, it looks like, is going to be the complete conclusion to the series. So let's go ahead and do one last thing in this video. I want to actually add our background. So I go to pexels.com and I think I typed in money. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to download this, free download, and I will definitely provide a link in the description for this so you don't have to search for it. And I'm going to open this in my Finder, and I'm going to rename this BG. And what I want to do is open my VS Code here, and I want to drag that into my source folder. So in my case, it's called BG2, which I'll need to rename really quick. Make sure that you put this in your source folder, however you'd like to do it. And I'm going to go to my, let's take a look over here. Sorry about this. I'm going to go to my app.css file. Is that where I threw it? No. I'm going to go to my index.css. Is that right? Yes. Okay. So go to your index.css file, which is at the top level. And inside of your body tag, underneath all of this stuff that's already there, I want you to put all of this. Box sizing border box. Background image is equal to url./ background.jpg, or wherever you put it, background size cover, background repeat, no repeat, background position, center, center. And I want you to save it, and let's make sure that that works as expected. It seems to. The opacity here is probably not perfect. So let's go ahead and open our app.css, which is inside of our app folder. So inside of components, we have our app folder. I want you to open the app.css. And we have a app container, if you remember. We called it bills container. So inside of our bills container, we want to change the background color to an RGBA value, which RGB is obviously red, green, and blue, and then A is alpha, which allows us to provide a fourth value, which is our opacity, and we'll set it equal to 0.8 and save. And you can see now that that looks a lot better. So let's actually change a few things in general here. I'm gonna copy my CSS here. So we're gonna want to have this as our final CSS. I got rid of our height. We were manually defining our height. I got rid of that because now that can be defined by the content inside of the div, now that we actually have content inside of it. And this is what you should end up with right here. A nice looking square that's about the same height as our content. So this is where I'm gonna leave this video, and in the next video, we're gonna finish up our app. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.